Welcome to Raw Mnd Sports, where we dig into the minds of athletes and sports fanatics. I'm your host, Ryan Primetime Jones. If you have a love and passion for sports, then this is the show for you. So I'm here today with Majkrzak. He's at a college, the head coach of the junior college, Bryant Stratton. He's in Wisconsin with everybody's favorite quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, home of the Cheeseheads. We're here today to kind of discuss his very unique story from where he was to where he's at now. And his story is kind of different from a different part of the sports world. So, Mac, kind of tell us about your story and how did you end up at Bryant Stratton Junior College?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to kind of talk a little bit about my background in our program and all those types of things. So, yeah, it is a little unique. I wasn't a college basketball player, which in the coaching world definitely is not the normal path, especially as someone who's fortunate enough to be a head coach at the age of 28. Usually you had to have some kind of extensive playing experience. The kind of flip side of that is I started coaching college basketball at the age of 19. So in that regard, it almost helps you a little bit because since I wasn't playing in college, I just started coaching right away. And so sometimes you got to look at some things that normally are negatives and try to kind of change them into positives.
Wow, that's very intriguing right there. You started at 19 years old coaching college basketball. That's a very good gift that most people don't get a chance to do, even though you didn't play basketball. So tell us a little bit about the teams that the team actually that you started coaching basketball with at 19.
So I played in high school. I was very average. Started a few years at a small high school, but nothing special. Kind of knew I really was into coaching. So I decided to go to UW Green Bay, which is a Division I school here in Wisconsin. And someone said start out as a student manager. So that was the initial starting point. First year was a lot of wiping up sweat and filming practices and kind of doing whatever would keep me around where they'd let me hang around and learn. And then as I kind of stayed there longer, I got a little bit more responsibility each year. I got a really fortunate break where our head coach after my sophomore year left to become the head coach at Toledo. And they promoted the assistant, Brian Wardle, to the head coach. And once he got the head coaching job, I had a little bit more responsibility than kind of what I started with. So that was kind of the initial break into it. Just kind of worked out well.
Wow. So basically you ended up becoming an assistant you built yourself from the ground up. And you're basically kind of able to get in immediately right there. So how was that experience for you to become your first time as in getting more involved into the game of basketball outside of just the manager part, as into the X's and O's?
Yep. I think I started coaching an AAU team around my junior year of college as well. And we ended up having a pretty good group. But the first summer I could really coach it full on was after I graduated from Green Bay. That was the first year I was allowed to coach recruitable players, because up to that point, it was kind of a conflict of interest thing. And that summer, we ended up having a kid who went to Marquette, another one who went to Wisconsin, one who played Division I at Vermont, and then another kid who walked on at Nebraska. So it was one of those fun things where I was able to be around a lot of talented kids and coach them myself. I think that worked out well because I learned all this stuff at Green Bay from people. But as a student, I wasn't necessarily able to coach everyone X's and O's wise. So it was great to have that opportunity to actually be able to, kind of be in charge and run the plays and call the timeouts and do the subbing and all that stuff at 22. That was a pretty unique experience as well.
Okay, you a pretty young coach, man. So tell me about was this the same college team, correct me if I'm wrong, that you was a part of the coaching staff that had to run into those powerhouse Butler teams at that time with Brad Stevens?
Absolutely. Yep. That was the Brad Stevens. It's President Stevens, as people like calling him these days. It was crazy because, I mean, you knew he was a really good coach, but you didn't expect 3 or 4 years later for him to be at Boston and be regarded as maybe the best coach in the world. But at the same time, we didn't expect them to make those runs to the Final Four either. And sure enough, they did. So we were fortunate enough. We beat them at Green Bay, I think 3 times when I was there, where we had really good games with them and were able to compete. But they always had this kind of special Butler aura to them, and they seemed to play even better as March approached.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say because I know his recruiting class wasn't as big. You know, Gordon Hayward ended up becoming a pretty much dominant NBA player, even though he got hurt last year. And I was saying to myself, every year he went 2 years to the finals, the national championship, even though he lost, but it was just the point of getting there from there.
Right.
That's what I'm about to go to now. I'm gonna ask you now, Matt, is that it's funny, like even with these small programs, a lot of them don't get as much recognition because of the big programs by a team like Butler and the fact that you was in the same conference or played them several times, so they had the chance to get the recognition. Do you think some of those players are really just as skilled or very good as other players as well in other areas? You think they need more recognition? Or
yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting because we all looked at Butler at the time as a complete Cinderella story. But when you look back at it, Gordon Hayward obviously is an NBA All-Star. Matt Howard's had a pretty good career in the NBA and a great career overseas. Shelvin Mack is still playing in the NBA, I believe, 10 years in. Ronald Norad and Willie Veasley, who I think were their 2 other starters at the time, are both coaching Division I college basketball right now. So it's not that hard to understand how a team with a NBA All-Star, 2 other NBA players, and 2 guys who become Division I coaches ends up making a run to the Final Four. I think a lot of times the Cinderella label, it's good because it's a smaller school, but it's usually because they're that talented. At Green Bay, I wasn't a part of this team. I was gone at this point, but they had a team with about 4 or 5 guys that have either been in the NBA or close to the NBA at the same time, and they never were able to stay healthy in that March type season, but they beat Virginia, they beat Wisconsin, they beat Marquette with that group of guys. And just seeing those games, it wasn't like they were pulling some crazy upset. They were just as talented, which, you know, it's easy in hindsight to look back and be like, well, they had 2 or 3 NBA players. So talented. No wonder they were so talented.
So where were you at after you left during that time frame you were discussing
so
about?
This is kind of an interesting one. I get done with Green Bay after 4 years. I want to coach college basketball, but I decided to take the LSAT, which is the law school entrance test. And I thought, well, if I don't do the basketball thing, maybe I'll do the law school thing. And I got my score back, and it was, my dad called me and he's like, oh my God, I just got your LSAT back. And I'm thinking, I know it's not very good. I don't really care about it. I'm not going to do it. And I don't know if they got the wrong score or what happened, but I got in the 100th percentile and ended up getting a full ride to Madison to go to law school at UW-Madison basically for free. I had some Ivy Leagues that I was waitlisted to. And my mom, I think still to this day, might want to kill me because I was like, no, I'm not going to law school. I need to coach. And so I went to Chadron, Nebraska, and ended up going to be a graduate assistant in Chadron, which the big-time restaurant that we take recruits out to is Pizza Hut or Wild's Bar and Grill. Those were the 2 options. I absolutely loved it. It was awesome. I did it because they had no full-time assistant, and it was an NCAA Division II school that I could be the top assistant at 23. And kind of throughout my story, I kept trying to get as much responsibility as early as possible, which might have not always been the best idea, but that was always kind of my mindset was, you know, I'll show up, and if I have responsibility, we'll get good. And so I get to Chadron, and, you know, tiny town. Danny Woodhead played there. That'd be about the only thing anyone would know of Chadron. And we go 3-23 my first year. So I went from an AAU year where I think we only lost 3-4 games the whole summer to only winning 3 games. And it's amazing how you get humbled from thinking you have all the answers as a coach to realizing you don't know anything about anything. And that certainly happened for me in year 1.
Man, I know that was rough for you. Go from winning games like it's nothing in AAU to 3-23. Yikes.
Yeah. And Green Bay, I think, won the conference the first year after I left. I can't remember if the exact years match up, but I left a really good situation at Green Bay, really good AAU situation, and went 3-23. So in Nebraska.
Right. So before I get to the next subject or where you at, or whatever, tell me about a little bit about Wisconsin. I'm assuming that you still be up there a lot. That's like your home area. You love it. What's the best thing to eat? If I want to take a trip to Wisconsin, what am I going to eat?
Well, the easy answer is like cheese curds and beer. That's like the staples. Um, you can't go wrong with that. But my personal favorite is a Johnsonville brat. Um, I'm from a town called Elkhart Lake, which is about halfway between Milwaukee and Green Bay, and the Johnsonville Sausage Factory is about 15 minutes away, and the brats there are unbelievable. I would say a brat at a Packer game when it's about negative 10 degrees outside, and the only thing keeping you warm is the brat off the grill. It doesn't get better than that.
So you pretty much answered my next question. So I know you love those. Seems like you're a cold natured guy, so I'm pretty sure you love the cold weather. And how's a Green Bay lifestyle? I'm gonna tell you now, my mom's a diehard Packers fan. Anytime they on the road, my mom would take a trip to watch the Packers. So I'm not a Packers fan, but my favorite quarterback in the NFL is Aaron Rodgers. So tell me the lifestyle of a Green Bay game in a Green Bay Packers environment.
Yeah. So they're kind of like the romantic idea that they portray on TV. It's kind of true. I mean, the games are absolutely unbelievable. The seats are tight, so you're all packed in there. You're next to some 85-year-old lady, and she's cursing out the Bears starting quarterback, and it's just that it's a different deal than any other sports thing I've ever seen. As great as the games are, I guess the best way to describe it, and this is how I kind of tell people when they ask what Green Bay was like, is on Monday, if the Packers won, you'd be in the grocery store, and Ethel at the counter would be smiling at you saying, "How's your day going? Like, did you see the game last night?" And if they lose and you go to that same grocery store, you're not even speaking words. You're getting death glares. Like, people are not happy. Like, there's nothing good going on in Green Bay after a loss. Yeah.
I got one more question for you. Have you ever done the Lambeau Leap?
I have not done a Lambeau Leap. That's probably a bucket list item. I'm going to have to grow my coaching career so I can talk myself onto the field and do a Lambeau Leap. One other Green Bay story. I was there at 21. I turned 21 the weekend between the conference finals and the Super Bowl, the year they won it over the Steelers. So my first legal weekend of being allowed at bars was the weekend they won the Super Bowl. It was still to this day, I call it the best day of my life, but we ended up in the same area as Lil Wayne because he's a big Packer fan and flew into town, and you couldn't see him because he had all these 6'8", 350-pound guys around him, and there he is in the middle, and unless you were a good-looking girl, you weren't getting in the circle.
Oh, man. Some type of look, huh?
Entertaining.
All right, let's go to your college that you're at now. You're the head coach at Bryant Stratton Junior College, correct?
I am. Yep.
Let's talk about that. And how do you feel, and what's your approach to players, and how do you make those guys feel comfortable or developing them to possibly go from junior college, and I'm assuming to that next D1 opportunity?
Yeah, I think it's really exciting, first of all. I mean, the opportunity to work with, we have scholarships at our school, so we're able to get some pretty high-level kids. We have 7 kids 6'6" or taller. I guess my big thing, after being at the D1 and D2 level of the NCAA, I wasn't sold on taking a junior college job. I had some negative perceptions of some of it. Academically, it's always been something that's pretty important to me. And, you get the label of junior college kids don't care about school. And my big thing was, we're going to do it, but we're just going to do it differently. And so we talk all the time about being different and acting different, recruiting different. And so far it's gone really well. 9 of our 11 kids are full qualifiers, meaning academically they didn't have to go junior college. They just chose to try to go to a higher level. We have a D1 transfer from Western Michigan. We have a few kids that had D2 offers that are trying to, grow and hopefully end up at that Division I level. And then we have a lot of kids that, being in Wisconsin, there's only one Division II school. So there's all these kids that are talented enough to play Division II, but just don't get the looks because there's a lack of Division II schools. And so that was kind of my vision with this is, sure, we'll have a few Division I players, but I really want to bring in these kids that previously were paying for college and try to get them scholarships at any level, whether that's Division II, NAI, or at least get 2 years of school paid for through us.
I got you. Um, that's amazing there, man. So how many years have you been coaching there?
This is my first year. So we have our first team meeting with the group in an hour and 5 minutes. So that'll be my first time talking to everyone. We just got a kid from Venezuela who landed here yesterday. A kid from England came last week, and it'll be the first time the whole group's together.
So this is gonna be very fun for you. Sound like you just getting your, as what people say, getting your feet wet. So, sheesh, you got a whole new group. You got a new group that you're coaching, and they're learning your system or whatever. So who are some of the premier junior colleges that you play against?
I would say in the Midwest, last year, Triton College won the national title. They're in Illinois. Kirkwood is a program in Iowa that has had a lot of success. They've won a national title. Actually, their coach, Coach Peterson's one of the guys that kind of made me think that coaching junior college is something I want to do, just seeing how he ran a program. Southwestern in Iowa is coached by a guy named Blake Peterson, and before that, Todd Lawrenson. And those guys were also kind of guys I looked up to when I was at Bemidji as good junior college coaches and doing things the right way. And those are probably some of the programs that, we kind of are looking at trying to compete with because they've all won national titles or competed for national titles at the highest level. So those are probably three of the kind of premier ones.
Man, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, how do you feel about going into the season here? How you feel like? You got a lot of experience. Do you feel like you need? How are you taking it right now?
So we have all new players more or less. We only have 3 returning kids from last year, and so a lot of the kids we have are new. At the same time, just being in Milwaukee and having some of the connections we have, we probably will be, one of the 2-3 most talented teams in the entire area and probably in our region. I think we're either 1 or 2 talent-wise. It's something we're trying to not run from because I think everybody's talked about how high the expectations are going to be just based on our recruiting class. But at the same time, it's a new group. There's going to be a lot of learning, and it's kind of one of those race for maturities. How quickly can we grow up to the point where we can compete against sophomores and some of these older kids at a national title level? I think we'll for sure be good. It's just how good can we get?
Also, what's your mentality as a head coach? What do you do before each game? Like, you have like some type of ritual, some type of preparation that you do? What is your
Well, it'll be interesting year 1 of being a head coach, but the last 4 years at my previous D2 school, I kind of settled into a lot of routines that I don't think I'll ever break just because they kind of work for me. I have an energy drink before the game, which is a little probably not the greatest idea, and I'm positive the referees and our players don't always enjoy that. They probably would like me to not do that, but that's definitely something I do. I talk to my dad before almost every game just to vent about kind of whatever I'm worried about and that kind of stuff. He's a pretty good listener and usually has the right thing to say. And then before the games, I'm pretty loose. There's definitely some nerves that go into basketball, but the game stuff for me is pretty fun. I don't get too worked up about it going into it. At that point, we've kind of done as coaches all we can do, and it's up to the players to go win the thing.
I agree. Speaking of that, since you went to energy drinks, let's talk about what do you have your guys on? Do you have them on like a type of nutrition diet, or what do you do for those guys, like the kids coming in?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're college kids, so I'm going to try to get them to eat a little bit healthier, but it's always a struggle. I think, we have some rules in place with what you can eat 24 hours before game time. We try to feed them on the road, as healthy as we possibly can. Do stuff like Subway and things and Jimmy John's and fast stuff, but not pizza and stuff that's going to make their stomach sore. We talk about nutrition a lot. We'll have some nutritionalists give them some guidelines. But a lot of the times at these smaller schools, we don't have the budgets to pay for all their meals and put them on those training tables the way the Division I schools do. So it's a lot on the kid to kind of understand and learn. And it comes down to how good do they want to be. Not just eating, but sleep and how much extra work you're putting in, and are you getting extra lifting sessions in? If you want to be great, you got to do those things. And a lot of that falls on the kid at the lower levels.
Got like 2 more questions for you. Then I'm gonna let you get to your preparation for your first meeting with your team. Who are your role models or coaches who you kind of look up to?
I would say the 4 head coaches I've had that I've worked for are definitely the guys I look up to. It's one thing watching a guy on TV and, liking what they do from afar. And a guy like Brad Stevens would be in that category, especially just being more familiar with him. But my first head coach at Green Bay is Todd Kowalcz. He took over Toledo, who was the worst team in the country, I think, by every measure, and was on a bunch of academic sanctions. And I think he won mid-major coach of the year 2 years later, just changing that program, changing that culture. And I know he's interviewed for some high major jobs. He's one of the best offensive coaches in the nation. He's definitely a guy that probably he's a great program builder. And then Brian Wardle was my second coach at Green Bay. He's now at Bradley in the Missouri Valley. And it was interesting because he was the assistant for Todd, and I saw him kind of transition into the head coaching role. And basically, he did everything the opposite. He went from great offensively to being the best defense and rebounding team in the country almost. And it was just interesting to see kind of the same system, but the 2 different personalities and the results it had. And then at Shadron, I worked under a guy named Brent Bargan. The best person I've seen at just treating people and asking about your family and different things. I just learned a lot about how you treat the kids at the lower level. A lot of times you need to treat a little bit better, which seems odd, but as a head coach, you don't have that whole support staff of assistants and, trainers and all these other people. And so that was kind of the thing that just stuck out with him. And then my last boss was Mike Boschee at Bemidji State. His brother Jeff played at Kansas, and honestly, he right now has probably had the biggest influence on everything, just because by the time I worked for him, I was at a more mature level of my coaching career. And just watching the way he ran a program as a whole, he did a great job of having us involved as assistants, where every decision he made, we had talked about. And I understood the whys of the decisions rather than just understanding like, hey, this is the decision, we're going with it. And I think I've leaned on that almost every day, where I've had no real surprises in year 1 as a head coach. And I think a lot of that just falls on the 4 guys I've worked for and how good they were.
Man, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, that's pretty much all I have today for RAW Mnd Sports. Coach Matt, man, I appreciate you, and I'm wishing you nothing but the best